Growth in our formative years and in subsequent phases of our maturity cycle gets shaped via mentors who act as role models. The subtle influence that the mentors exert on the mentee leaves indelible impression that last a lifetime. In many cases, the mentors are not even aware that they are influencing the mentee. On the part of the mentee, it is almost a love at first sight syndrome. Every behavioral nuance of the mentor, like his way of standing, posturing, speaking, reacting, is picked up by the mentee in a very subconscious and subtle way. In the organizational context, we have often observed the junior staff imitating the behavior pattern of the seniors, and that is how the organization culture gets formed. That culture may be good or bad, desirable or undesirable, functional or dysfunctional is another matter. Typically, in the highly bureaucratic and governmental setup, one witnesses often a culture of complete non accountability, carelessness, indifference, and disregard towards customer care, which can easily be attributed to negative influence of role models. Many organizations that develop a reactive culture, which is bereft of any strategy, is also indicative of bad mentorship. However, in this presentation, I will explain how strong and far-sighted mentorship helps individuals grow emotionally as well as intellectually. I had many years back the good fortune and privilege of interacting with Field Marshal Manekshaw, the second highly decorated and admired General of Indian Army. Through several interactions, I could gather his perspectives on what constitute good mentorship, he being a mentor of many generals in the Indian Defence Services. Let me quote a few examples. When asked what attributes a leader must possess, he told me that he must have 3 C's of credibility, competence, and confidence. To elaborate this, he narrated an instance when Field Marshal was a colonel and was posted in erstwhile Myanmar, known as Burma in those days, and was on the front in the war, Second World War. His orderly got very agitated at one point in time, as apparently he was not promoted in that year's appraisal. The burly orderly started shouting that he will shoot the colonel that night. Colonel Manekshaw's colleagues advised the colonel to remove the orderly from the duties and have him court-martialed. But Colonel Manekshaw had his own plan. He called the orderly and gave him a slap tightly across his face and chastised him for his unruly behavior and ordered him to do the guard duty that night in front of his tent and bring him hot mug of water for his shave and tea in the morning. And he dismissed the orderly. Promptly next morning, the orderly complied with the order. Field Marshal told me that though he was scared about the outcome, he felt that it was necessary for him to establish his credibility as an unruffled leader. This credibility is an important element of a good mentor. Credibility gives birth to confidence. Confidence builds our self-esteem. The competence that we are talking about is of 2 types. First one is the functional competence. The second competence is non-cognitive in nature. Let me elaborate on this point. My experience of dealing with many good mentors and mentees have shown to me that first and foremost, these mentors have an easygoing approach towards their subordinates peers, and superiors. There is no throwing of weight around, easy camaraderie. They like to interact and do not offer excuses even when they are busy. While interacting with mentees, they give complete and undivided attention to them. No phone calls, no looking at files, no avoidance of eye contact. Offer of help is only when the help is sought. They do not go running around offering unsolicited help. Another very amusing and interesting thing that I have observed in mentors is that they do not have any complexes in receiving or requesting help. As we know, there is something called inferiority complex, something called superiority complex. I suppose mentors have equality complex. It is very natural for them to go to their junior most staff and ask him or her to teach them how to make a good PowerPoint presentation. Such an approach has two major benefits. It helps improve the morale of the staff tremendously, and secondly, it helps the mentor acquire a new skill. The next quality that one observes in a good mentor is that they are very non-intrusive yet assertive and have their knack of voicing their views without upsetting. Assertiveness implies firmness and not aggression. They are persuasive yet gentle in nature and not argumentative. At the same time, there is great deal of active listening. In a typical mentor-mentee talking, the percentage of mentor talking is around 30%. 70% of time is spent on active listening to mentors' feelings, experiences, and so on. I have also seen some mentors who are compulsive talkers and very, very autobiographical in nature. At the shortest provocation, they will indulge in self-praise or self-derision camouflaged as self-praise. Some are plain disinterested in the conversation, or partly because of their incompetence or because of their preoccupation, thus completely upsetting the mentee. There are also few who start micromanaging the mentee, thus almost cutting their wings to fly or take off. Competent mentors have the ability to empathize with the mentee, to put ourselves in another person's shoes and feel his or her emotions is a very powerful way of communicating and fostering bonding. Few are adept in this. Many pretend to do this, but it is easy to spot the superficiality and hollowness. Imagine a situation where a mentor says that he has enough time for discussion but is yawning and looking at his phone. What does it convey? The irony of communication is that when we think we are communicating least, in fact we are communicating most. Is there a single consistent Achilles heel in organizational mentoring structures? This is marginal mentoring. Marginal or mediocre mentoring may be a consequence of assigning mentors who are too busy, disinterested, dysfunctional, or simply lack competence to perform the role effectively. Prospective mentors often are randomly selected or told to participate. Leaders fail to give resources to evaluate or reward mentoring. With no meaningful incentives attached, it is justifiably seen as an onerous add-on duty, a thankless distraction from real work leading to pay and advancement. What is more, too often program leaders erroneously assume that any successful manager can mentor effectively with minimal training, and that the art of mentoring is an innate or easy to acquire skill. They get into the act. Since so many never had any mentors themselves, they lack the mental prototype or mental maps for how it is done well. Evidence indicates that poor mentoring can be worse for mentees than no mentoring at all. Ill prepared and marginally competent mentors not only give mentoring a bad name, they also sabotage retention, commitment, and employee development, the very objectives that drive mentoring initiatives in the first place. It is easy to confuse the word mentor with trainer, a teacher, or a coach. A mentor's job may include elements of all the three, like a job of a trainer, job of a teacher, a job of a coach. But his or her primary focus is to offer moral and emotional support, honest feedback in a non threatening manner, and the occasional pushback and nudge. Indeed, a great mentor may have no formal training at all. What is important is a mentor's experience, insight, his intuitive faculties, and above all, the ability to communicate it to the mentee. The best master class of mentor mentee relation was done by Lord Krishna to his disciple Arjuna in the epic war of Mahabharata. I will close down this podcast by narrating from the Indian epic Mahabharata. As we all know, Arjuna was a great warrior and a master in archery, but had a nervous breakdown, lost his nerve in the war, seeing all his near and dear relatives on the opposite side. His mentor, Lord Krishna, was driving the chariot, as we all know. The Lord listened to the helplessness and loss of nerve of his mentee and started acting as his sounding board. Lord Krishna then questioned, note the word questioned, first listened and then questioned Arjuna's motive, purpose, and goal, and the choices available to him in getting justice. Lord Krishna then offered constructive criticism of the thought process of Arjuna and exhorted him to do his duties without worrying about the results or outcome. The Lord provided emotional support and encouragement. Please note the word emotional support and encouragement, and assured him that he can count on him whenever and wherever there will be injustice. We know, yada yada hi dharmasya glanirvavati bharata tadatmanam srijamyam. Lord Krishna then advises on a moral code of conduct for the right choices and behavior in life for self and for others. Finally, Lord Krishna impresses upon his mentee to own up the consequences of his actions, and not to recriminate or blame others, but carry out his tasks and duties in an orderly manner. So, what can we learn from Lord Krishna's master class? A good mentor should listen and act as a sounding board for the mentee's issues. Listen, listen, listen. Then question the mentee's plans, goals, and aspirations with respect. Question and nudge, question and nudge. Offer constructive criticism of the mentee's choices and behavior. Constructive and not destructive criticism, which is very non-threatening in nature. Then provide emotional support and encouragement, particularly during trying times. Model good behavior, ethics and values pertinent to the mentee's field. Push the mentee beyond the comfortable, beyond the obvious, go behind the obvious by challenging the mentees to excel. Encourage independent thinking and decision making, and no spoon feeding. And finally, facilitate a mentee's success through networking, the provision of resources, and active promotion of mentee's career. That way, a mentor can really perform the role of what we call as a friend, philosopher, and guide. Thank you.